have.
It's already 7:05.
You're an hour and a half up the death to me. That's what I'm saying. I'll get it.
We're running, we're good.
Okay.
We're
You're
good?
good,
Okay,
you're good.
very good. Now we will officially call the meeting to order now that we are recording on the audio-video device. And everybody, please use your microphones, as we're not going to designate Reed as an official recording secretary for the evening.
Since he does not operate.
All right, let's see. Roll call. Who are we missing?
Virginia.
Virginia Brown.
Okay. All right, well, I'll just do the roll call here. Daniel Webster, present. Virginia Brown, absent.
Teresa Doan. Here.
Oh, we have Teresa, Tim Pasadakis,
Here.
David Lamont,
Here.
Gary Libby,
Here.
Dino Pastelakis,
Here.
Tracy Remark,
Here.
Truman
Truman
G. I'm reading William Chapin, and I know it's not Bill. Thank you, Truman. All right.
Okay, so just Virginia Brown is out.
All right, so now, next, why don't we do a quick pledge of allegiance and
Oh, okay.
invocation, please, Tracy? Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear Lord, just thank you for getting us all here safely. We pray that we get a recording secretary. We ask that you guide our hearts and our thoughts so that our discussion and our decisions are in the best interest of Daytona Beach. In your name, amen.
Next, we have approval with respect to two sets of minutes.
Okay.
One of the sets of minutes for the September, which were not approved last month and were sent back, I believe we have now just been provided. It'd be my suggestion that we not rush that, and we have an opportunity to review those and deal with those at the next meeting. And then we have the minutes for the October meeting, which I'm sure we're going to have some comments with respect to those minutes.
Okay.
Where did they go to?
Well, however you want to do it, actually, I didn't realize that I could just call Jeannie Tolley, and because she proofs these before they go out, and I mean, I have a lot of changes to the minutes, some for October, some of them just grammatical, but a lot of them, again, I think they're going to need to listen to the recorder and hear exactly what was said, and I'm sure others do, so how do we want to do that?
And we don't actually have a recording secretary, although we do have the audio and the video and such. Reed, what would be the recommendation? Should we wait on this until next month when we actually have a live person?
I agree we should do that. If we could
Call
take
Jeannie
those
Tolley
back,
ahead.
and what I would ask is if you have some comments, I think some of you have written down some comments on the minutes. If you could provide those to us, we'll use that as the areas that we need to really focus on as well.
Okay.
But we'll go over that again.
Okay.
Any objection to that approach? All right.
Do them next month, okay.
Yeah.
But we have to, Mr. Chairman, we really have to catch up on these. This is getting, bad.
Yeah.
I agree. So why don't everybody just submit their comments, marking them up or whatever, and then maybe we'll have a head start and we can move along at the next meeting. All right, next we have staff reports. Do we have any staff reports? Code enforcement? Not here. Okay. Moving on then, public.
I
move to adjourn. No.
Well, no. I was to say, I would like to just make one comment, even though Mr. Fitzpatrick isn't here to hear it. But actually, it looks like he's finally gotten ahead of the curve, because we're not getting pages and pages and pages of violations. And there were just 38 new cases that were opened. And it doesn't mean that he's not out there looking. It just means that so much has been done that we really are seeing the impact of it. So I just wanted that on the record, even though he wasn't here to hear it. But
Thank you. All right, we'll move on then to public comments, and we have Pat Drago out there. Pat, would you like to come up? And we're not going to limit you to an automatic 3 minutes.
I think I'll I'll be done in a few minutes.
Okay, very
I
good.
won't be long. My name is Pat Drago, and I'm here as chairman of the Historic Preservation Board. And I know that you have an item on the agenda later, which is for your information only. And I wanted to just have you hear a little bit about what our goal has been for the Historic Preservation Board. And I understand you will not be discussing or taking action on the Surfside memo or the Surfside exhibits, but this is to prepare you for what we hope is a joint meeting. But I thought that I would like to kind of let you know the thinking of the Preservation Board to get to this point. First of all, we have spent many, many hours going through every aspect of the design guidelines. The purpose of that are really multiple purposes. First of all, we as a board have been able to express our philosophy. We've been able to hear one another, and it's expressed in the design guidelines. We started from the Seabreeze guidelines, and then we have modified that and set up a template that we hope will be a process for us to go forward with future historic districts. I will tell you that we hope you'll see as a thread throughout the guidelines a tremendous commitment to preserving the historic character of neighborhoods, communities, as well as specific contributing structures. We thought we have allowed for keeping that visible architectural character, but then accepting the fact that in certain conditions and times there may be different techniques, approaches, or materials that should be considered. So we wanted to have the character set forth as well as some ability to deal with things as they change through construction. Also, it is our hope that the design guidelines that we bring forward, and that's why they're presented for you, will not be in conflict. What we do not want is to have an applicant that decides to undertake renovation or redevelopment or reconstruction on a historic building, and they come to one board and get a set of direction, they come to another board and get a different direction, they go to planning board and city commission, and every single one is in conflict. That's one of the reasons we're going to send them to you. We want to take them forward. We hope that the design guidelines that we find when we ultimately adopt them are in complement with your goals. We hope that historic preservation is the goal of the entire city, okay? And that the way we approach it, we've come to an agreement so that we do not discourage reinvestment and redevelopment, okay? I just want to tell you that is really, really critical to us. And we've talked about adaptive reuse, et cetera. I have gone on behalf of the Historic Preservation Board and attended the public workshops on the rewrite of the Land Development Code and given input to Clarion, saying that when it came to setbacks, lot coverage, and those kinds of things, that if you're in a historic neighborhood, that needs to be recognized, okay? And we want to be able to redevelop to the extent of the original historic footprint, even though that lot may be bare at this time. We hope that there will be advantages to redeveloping and reinvesting in historic neighborhoods, and that even if it's not a contributing structure, we hope that some of these basic tenets will be things that other boards, et cetera, can adopt. And that's the goal, because we think that the city commission, the community, everybody said, and every consultant we get says that establishing a character, reinforcing it, we should not be at war with one another. We need to be complementing one another. I also wanted to talk about the other thing that we do not have, we have not taken any position on yet, is the defining boundary for the Surfside District. And I think we had discussion at our last meeting. We've had multiple discussions, and we really have two options before us as a board, and we're looking to have input by the property owners as well as the Main Street redevelopment area, and we want to make sure we don't run up against the goals for the E-zone. But, you know, there is a national district that was already identified 15, 20 years ago, and much of that has been lost or demolition. We do not want to have that continued loss. We want to make sure that what we come forward with is something that we all can embrace. So we have that as the established national district, and then a modified district based upon what the current inventory is, okay? If we go with the modified district, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the board, it's not adopted, okay? Then we would ask that the owners of any of the historic buildings that would be outside of the district, the local district, that they might voluntarily apply for that local district designation, because there are some really critical buildings that need to be saved. And the character of Main Street as a whole, we think, is valuable, even if it might not be within the adopted local district. So I wanted you, as you read the documents, acquaint yourself with the documents, and anticipate a subsequent discussion. I wanted you to kind of know what we're thinking as a group without any specific action on any particular, but I think I'm reflecting kind of what we as a board have been working toward. So that was what Mike wanted to speak from the public.
Pat, first I want to say thank you for coming and giving us a little intro into the historic board's perspectives. But I'd also like to take a minute here, if we have some other board members who may have some questions, for a little interaction at this time, because we have a fairly light agenda tonight, and I think it would be a good opportunity to get us all up to speed a little bit more.
And I want to caution, I'm not speaking for the board. Nothing is adopted. This is just, since I saw it on your agenda.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gary?
Yeah, Pat, one of the critical factors in the individual designations, rather than, for example, let's take Main Street, rather than declaring the entire street part of the historic district, going with individual buildings. One of the incentives in the latter is the carrot of the carrot and the stick, and those are the tax incentives. Has the Historic Preservation Advisory Board come up with packaging or bundling some of those so that they can be brought to the City Commission for action? Because right now, there's really little incentive for a property owner to individually designate his or her property locally. Have you thought about that?
We've thought about that. I don't think we've not really had that discussion further than looking for an availability of grants, recognizing that if it's an income-producing property, that there are benefits within the federal income tax code. I don't think I think that our board would love to have that. I'm meeting with the city manager later this month, but I'm not sure that finding funds available is yes, we've thought about it.
Could I ask you the city manager is tremendously important and helpful, but the state history officer is even more so. And I think it's very important for either somebody from state to come down or for you to go up there to look at what other communities have done in incentives for property owners who have decided to declare their buildings, recognize the historic significance, because there's a stick part of it and there has to be a carrot part of it. The second question is, frankly, I don't think there's really too much discussion with Clarion about anything other than the borders. It's the borders of where this historic district should go that has been the sticking point on your board, if I may use that inelegant term. And it also seems to be, in reading your minutes, keep going back to this problem. Is the Historic Preservation Advisory Board, in its search for other opinions, does it realize that the E-zone plan trumps all soldiers? I mean, the E-zone plan, and that we have been spending some of our time in trying to reconcile some of the modest differences in the E-zone plan and the redevelopment master plan for the Main Street area, and it includes most, if not all, of Surfside Village's properties. I mean, do you realize, in not taking a stand as a historic board, what the implications might be?
I think the board has not taken a stand yet, and of course, even if if we adopted a draft, it would have to go through a whole series of advertisements, et cetera, to be a formal recommendation. I believe that the board does understand that, Mr. Libby, and I think that that's part of the crux, and I think that that's been key to the discussion, and at the last meeting, we had a quorum, but we had a number of key members missing, and there was a reluctance to take even a draft position because we feel that that is such an important issue for us. And there was very much a discussion that we wanted to hear from others. Once again, what we really want is we want success, and we want historic preservation to be everybody's value and ethic. And we have studied some, individually, we've studied some of the grants available. I've checked with several, and they've used CRA monies in some of the redevelopment districts for historic, for the grants, and we have talked through that, and that's going to be up to people like y'all. boards like y'all. The other thing that we have looked at, and that's why we've looked at making sure that the setbacks, et cetera, become almost a carrot for the redevelopment, because we had to see what can we actually affect without necessarily calling on agencies that are not within our ability to vote.
Don't you believe that Clarion, who's done this before, understands that with your, in Surfside Village, you have a completely different geographic scenario than you do in Seabree, in our Seabreeze University, where we've got 30 and 40-foot front yards. You don't have that. You're right on the streetscape. I still think that the critical issue is also the practical consideration of not designating individual structures on Main Street and accepting, unfortunately, the fact that most of it has gone south forever, historically.
I think I'm not going to speak for the board, because there are some who recognize that and some who do not. That's where we stand at this point. And when we get a final vote, then I'll know what the vote is.
My last comment is that, no decision is a decision. You
Well,
realize that.
Well, here's, as we have a series of meetings that we wanted to go through the public receiving information, and then we'll go through the advertisement and adoption. And yes, I understand that. And we have some people who are really anxious to go forward. We did not want to go forward in the absence of design guidelines, because we felt like with all that was happening around us, we wanted to make those statements. And as I said, once again, we wanted to make sure that it was compatible with other things. And I think the board we had multiple meetings in a month to get through that workload. But I think your point's valid, and is why I'm here tonight.
Good.
Is I want to make sure that we stay in process, but what I do not want is a replay of what happened with Seabreeze, wherein it was splintered, and what we really want is we want a success, and we want to have people to see the benefit, whether it's a tax incentive, whether it might be subsequent grants, whether we had talked to Clarion about adaptive reuse, perhaps some flexibility there, but that's where we need to talk to the neighborhood. And then once again, those things like setbacks and lot coverage, so that it recognizes the historic area, and it doesn't mean you cannot rebuild.
I think it really boils down. I mean, there's an awful lot of items, chapters in the book, but the real bone of contention really is Main Street. I mean, I've tried to track what's happened with my colleagues on historic preservation for the last 2 years. This has been going on, and it really is a recommendation on how do we treat Main Street. Is it currently in the condition that it can be considered, all of it, under the historic local designation, or is it gone to the point? And would the commission back that? And would property owners back it? Or should we be looking at the individual designation? One of our colleagues on our board has a historic a building that would qualify as a historic building. We all have neighbors and friends who have buildings that would qualify as historic buildings, and whether or not they would be interested in imposing upon themselves the carrot and the stick that should come with historic designation. I'm afraid that reticence is making your board fall behind as we're all moving forward and trying to compromise as best we can. And I think if we get out of distance, if you don't see us, we don't see you in the tail mirror, I think you will be gone. And I think we work too hard on the ordinance. And to give the ordinance integrity. It's a brand new historic preservation ordinance, to see anything happen to its integrity. So I would urge you to do your politicking, get your levitate, and see if you can get a board consensus.
I think another thing that we've talked about is on the Main Street area, and I've attended a number of the E-zone meetings, is to see, and we've had the direction was given that they're going to look for historic character as well. And there's no question in my mind, but I don't speak for the other board members, that where the politics are, where the direction of the city is, that's why we want to be compatible. And I think that having them work together is essential. What we don't want to do is, like I say, go forward and have a failure.
Okay.
then my advice would be, if we use Seabreeze, to get individual large property owners who are very politically active and have a lot of friends on the commission on your side.
That's the thought, yes, thank you.
Go ahead.
Just one quick thing on this individual local historic designation. If I remember correctly, in the CRA, if there is a local designated property, that there's facade grant money. Okay, because that's actually something that is already, and
Yeah.
that's not up to the board. We're not making those decisions. The money's there, the grant's there. They just have to choose to become a local designated historic property and go through what they need to for that. And once they are, then it's there. I was curious when I was looking, when you said you didn't want to proceed without design guidelines, and in this whole thing that we were given, the residential new construction, Brian, is that Fredley?
Friedley,
He's the
Fredley,
architect then,
yes.
right? Any idea on, it said that, staff would be working to draft the kind of design standards that he had suggested at past meetings. Any idea? Is
Well-
that part of your,
We understand that only contributing structures are governed by this. But we-
Right.
as I said, in talking about the character, we had hoped, and I know Brian Fredley had mentioned that he had worked within a couple of other jurisdictions, and we talked about other jurisdictions that have design criteria, and it has not done yet. So,
Okay.
but he had looked at Ormond as one, and I think there are a couple, I had mentioned DeLand, which has a very good, strong Main Street Historic District. That does not deter reinvestment or business and commerce, which I think is what we're all here for.
okay, but you're talking about design standards for new construction
construction.
to be compatible?
Correct,
Okay.
correct. And I understand that many of you have a great deal more depth and knowledge on this topic. I really come to it relatively newly, but I have been studying and working, and I will continue to learn. So thank you.
Okay. And then I was also, the other thing I was curious when I was reading through this, and you mentioned it, this idea of redeveloping to the original historic footprint. And it looks like there's an entire section that is supposed to be discussed at, or was, what month are we in? We're in November, so it was discussed at the October 18th.
Right.
Setbacks, reduction of minimum lot area, minimum side yard. What was the result of that discussion?
The result was that the board agreed that we would look for that original footprint if it can be documented, okay, which usually, many times can be with old photos, et cetera. So that original footprint, and then we talked about in the rewrite of the LDC, the fact that they are looking at contextual requirements and would have also the ability to do averaging for redevelopment. So that was the kind of thing, but if within a lot, even if it's bare, or if it's an existing building, and we looked at using the original footprint to that extent.
No matter what the setbacks are. So for
Correct.
instance, a garage that was within what are
2
today's
feet.
setbacks, but it was no more variance,
Correct.
they rebuilt to that.
Right.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was
Yeah.
really clear on what
We
that
really
was saying.
wanted to be, that was the goal of that,
Yeah,
was to
I
be
think that's
permissive.
really very important in Surfside, given the size of the lots, to be able to rebuild to what's there.
We're talking about page 12.
Yeah,
The-
page,
Yeah, the character of that
Yeah,
community, those
page
are
12.
small lots with minimal setbacks,
Yeah.
and they're really full.
right, right.
Yeah.
But that would have been the carrot, that's
Right.
how it was done.
That's a carrot. And
Right.
when you look at the LDC rewrite, when
Uh-huh.
they do Surfside, they've got 50-foot setbacks. You say, well, okay, can't do it.
No,
Cannot
I
do
only have a 50-foot lot.
So anyway, I wanted you to understand kind of where
Right.
our thinking is.
Okay.
Any other board members, any quick questions? Pat, thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you for your attention.
Helps.
Okay, any other public comments?
You've got staff here.
Oh.
Staff report before I.
Oh, sure. Code enforcement?
Did he get here? Ah, Mike. Hey.
You were given a compliment earlier.
Yes, you'll have to listen to it.
Okay. This is a year-to-date figure of Main Street. We've got about 303 on this one. Main Street, this month, we've done 38 cases, opened 27 and closed 11. Year to date, 2011, we've got 858 cases, 323 open, and 534 closed. South Atlantic, 32 cases. From October and November, we have 9 cases closed. 0 closed. We have 9 cases open, and still we have 9 cases. These are cases open in 2011. 51, 33, and 18 are now closed. Main Street. In 2010, we had 254 cases, opened 97 and closed 157. 2011, 858 cases with a change of about 232% increase, 237% increase. With open cases, at this point, we have 2010, 97, 2011, 324 for a 334 increase. And closed cases, we've got in 2010, 157, and 2011, we've closed 534 cases for a 240% increase. The Daytona Proud really is 90% of those numbers, having 9 individual inspectors out there for months at a time.
It seems, and Tracy noted this earlier, seems to be a trending down in the number of cases. Is that because you have less people out, they're focusing somewhere else, or their problems are being resolved, or?
Well,
You're ahead of the curve?
Well, we're done. We've got about 90% of the north done. So wherever they're sending us next is where the Daytona Proud goes.
Okay, so you're not spending as much time in the area because you've covered most of the territory?
Yes, that's correct. So those numbers will go back down. I'll be there, and then there'll be another officer also there.
Okay.
South Atlantic, 210, 38, 6 cases, 8 open and 28 closed for that year. And 2011, 51. Then we have 33 cases open and 18 closed for that year, for this year. That's down 35% because we've been working on the Main Street area. Is it an improvement at Main Street? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Just keep it up
Yeah.
as far as we're concerned, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really looking great.
Tim?
Who do we go with complaints that we receive about hotels?
It depends where they are. It'll be a different code officer for each area. If you go south, it'll be Denzel Sykes. If you go north, between Main Street and ISB and Seabreeze, it'll be me. And if you go north from there, it'll be Tom Cligg.
Okay.
And then, of course, we have the state of Florida. And so we always call them up when we give it to them, and then they come out and look.
Okay. So we just call your office and ask for
Sure.
Tom.
Actually, just dial 671-8000 and say the name of the employee, first and last, that you wish to reach, and it will go right to them.
But you gotta sound like a computer when you do it.
It's,
Not like a Greek?
yeah, it is.
It'll work
It's
with Mags.
Cligg, C-L-I-G, Cligg, yeah.
Gary?
I don't know if you're the proper person for me to ask this question to, because we don't have a police officer here, so I will assume that you're going to be the police guy for my question. Last Monday at about 6 a.m., and every day, if the weather is decent, I and probably 35 or 40 other residents use the Broadwalk in front of the Hilton Hotel to walk. It's called Broadwalk, if you look at our signs. Monday, I was walking, heading south, and as I approached the band shell, in front of me was a couple from Eustis with a baby carriage and a young child, and they were walking along the Broadwalk and looking at the band shell. Went around the corner at probably 15 or 20 miles an hour, came two people on bicycles and ran into the baby carriage, knocked the woman down. The baby carriage spun around. The baby was safe. The little girl was very upset and was screaming and yelling. It was a real commotion there. And the two on the bikes took off to the south on the Broadwalk. And there was a man sitting, as he sits every morning, looking at the ocean there, and he got up and we tried to help them get back to the Hilton. They were from Eustis. Later that morning, as I made the turn and headed back, I was heading down toward the amusement section, and another man came up to me on a bicycle with a dog, not on a leash, next to him, and said, "Do you have any spare change, mister?" And I said, "No, I don't. And I don't think you really should ride the bike on the Broadwalk here. It says, no bicycles." And he told me, "Well, the police have said it's okay. It's perfectly okay. They see us all the time and they let us walk." I didn't know whether or not I called the Hilton front desk to see if the people had made a police report. My cell phone was in the car being charged. I didn't have it on me, or I would have immediately used it. But this morning I walked again, and I realized that the bicycle, the no bicycle signs, the one to the north is actually 8.5 feet off the ground. It's so high that you don't see it. No pedestrian would see it. And there's really nothing to stop these people who are coming through the building, behind the band shell, down that hill. And they make that right-hand turn like racers onto the Broadwalk there. And I think we have the potential of a real serious problem. It could have been really serious with this family. And I don't know who to request some action on this. I think if we're going to have bicycles, we need to have it clearly designated, and they need to be signed as allowed. But if we're not, I think we're just looking for problems.
Could I tackle that one? Number one, we have that area with cameras, and could you tell me about when this happened?
About 6 o'clock, 5:45, 5:50 on Monday.
Morning.
Monday morning, yeah.
Okay.
This is all early in the morning.
Okay, but this one particular incident with the
In the
baby,
morning. These are all morning
Yeah.
incidents.
Okay.
This morning, I was told by a group of about 40 or 45 joggers to leave the Broadwalk and either go on the beach or go through the Hilton, because they had decided they were going to set up orange cones across the Broadwalk and take over the Broadwalk for a jogging race that they were doing. And this was a group, and so I naturally asked them if they had a permit or if this was anything official, and I was told no, but they were going to do it. And I tried to urge them that they weren't going to do it, and they sort of held off until I left. And I don't know, Neil was down there later. I passed him as I was leaving. He was coming, and I don't know if they put up the cones and held their race. But I don't know how we deal with, something as spontaneous as that. But it was a pretty good group. They had jugs of water, and they had all the apparatus to do something on the Broadwalk there. That just concerned me, because I don't know how we handle a challenge like that.
Well, I'd like to take that up directly with Captain Huffman, and if that's okay with you, and I'll get back to you on some remedies for what you're observing there.
I think the bike thing is a real potential problem because of the potential for theft and people coming up to pedestrians on bikes. And it's really, we really have to look at that.
And what are those motorized vehicles where
Segway.
I see some of them just racing through too. The police are obviously responsible when they use it, but the non-official ones should be, targeted.
I'm not sure about how those laws work with those things.
Because I'm there and I see. They're racing. We're having a bike show, and there's thousands of people walking around looking at bikes, and I see them racing through the crowds, and I'm like, well, and there's advertisements that say, what's that? Daytona. Well, there's advertisements on them all the time, you know.
Are you seeing this before or after the Bike Week event, or is it just during
I
Bike Week?
see it year-round.
Yeah,
All the time?
there,
Okay.
there's
Yeah.
a few locals that have the segways, and, I mean, I see them up and down
Okay.
A all the time.
Thank
You
you.
know, and I mean, to me, obviously, that's a motivator. The police are obviously responsible. It's the other ones that I'm worried about.
What I'd do is, and I'd encourage you, for particularly where, if you don't know where to send something, you know, like a complaint or something you observe during the day, feel free to pick up the phone and call me, and let me know, and I'll make sure that we get an answer back and react as soon as we get that information.
All right.
Okay? Thank you.
Dave?
Just a comment, before you're welcome to check into all this, but before you make any decisions on new rules, regulations for the boardwalk, if you could bring that back for a general discussion, because being someone who does ride bikes, wasn't me this past week, believe it or not, I don't go to the boardwalk. It was probably, there was a reason that these people were probably up there, was one, because you can't get on the beach right now because of the weather conditions. And so before we just arbitrarily set up a rule that no more jogging, running, bicycling, whatever on the beach, one of the neatest events Daytona had this year was when the MS ride back in October brought 2,000 bicycle riders down from the road from Jacksonville to Daytona Beach for an event, and ended up on the boardwalk on their bicycles. So let's just not arbitrarily say eliminate all bikes and joggers from the boardwalk.
That was
Discussion about
licensed,
it.
and they had a permit day.
Yeah, I think
for
when
that.
there's permitted and
I
licensed.
understand it, but we have a way of people just saying we don't want any runners or bikers or whatever on a certain area, and it gets done that way, and we don't look at the extenuating circumstances.
Except we already have a no bicycling sign, it's just not
Right.
readable.
I understand,
Right.
but I'm just saying, before we just outlaw joggers and bicyclers, would you rather have spring breakers and drunks down there? We have
Well,
a
I-
knee-jerk reaction to people having fun in this community, and all of a sudden, you're not gonna be able to run down the boardwalk.
Yeah,
All
let-
I'm asking is, before we have a new set of rules, let's have an open discussion, and because maybe some of these rules might be able to tweak it a little bit better. That's all I'm asking. I'm not saying
Yeah.
not to do it. I'm just saying, let's just not have a set of rules set up to outlaw things.
Mr. Chairman, I tried to be politically correct, Dave, and not sound like this was a complaint aimed at doing away with anything, because I don't believe that we should eliminate joggers and permitted licensed bike events on the Broadwalk. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about these other situations. Maybe we can't do it. Maybe there's nothing we can do other than better signage.
That's why I'd like to have
you know.
a discussion about it,
Yeah.
before we just have a new rule,
Yeah.
another rule.
But don't think that, your generalization that there are people who are against these kinds of events, I don't think anybody in this room is against those
I didn't
kind
say
of
rules. I'm
events.
just saying, before we have a set of
Yeah.
rules that does away with this stuff, and we eliminate more fun for the.
Now, I have one more for you. Maybe you will take, take offense with this one, but I had a call this morning from a property owner on Main Street, who's a pretty substantial property, multiple pieces of property, who's been having complaints from his tenants that the ladies of the evening have infiltrated Main Street again, and there seems to be, on a regular basis, yeah, I'm waiting for Lamont's response to this, but there seems to be some regular activity back on Main Street, and I told, he could not come here tonight because of another community event, and I shared with him that I'd be happy to mention it if he would like me to, and he said, yes, if you would, he'd appreciate it.
And if you are passing on to Captain Hoffman, actually, I have noticed more on A1A. Okay, I mean, a lot more. It's really, and early in the morning, again, between 6 and 7 a.m., like when I'm going to work and things like that, and.
Still dark out.
That's because they're just getting off.
Well, someone's going to get off, but anyway, it's.
I knew he'd have a smart remark.
It is, someone doesn't dress for business still when they're in, and watching cars approach. I have just noticed it in probably the past two weeks maybe.
I wonder if they're forcing them out of some other part of town and
Probably, and they're
relocating.
back
so.
over here. That's usually what happens.
Just over years though,
I
this
know.
time of year, you always see more of it this time because there's a lot of less tourists and other
Right.
people around. So
You notice it more
you
too.
notice it a lot more this time of year.
Teresa, did you have a comment?
Well, since we don't have our police officer here, we're
Yeah, poor Reed, he's good.
But I just want to reemphasize, when you get information, and it'll make your meeting shorter probably too, is just send it to me directly.
What number gets right through to you?
I hate to say this on TV,
Yeah,
but
he'll give
it's-
it to you.
All right.
He'll give it to you
me.
later.
Okay.
Besides 671-8188, you can call me at 366-0056. That's 366-0056.
Mike, I just have a couple quick questions for you. Have you been involved in any of the monitoring of the sound levels of the amplified music and such on Main Street, or has it just been the police department, or has your office been involved in that too?
The police department was doing the monitoring.
Okay, all right. And secondly, and I'd run this by Reed, and I just have a question. Boot Hill just put up a new sign over their roof facing west, Boot Hill. And Reed says that that's approved, and at first I thought there was actually a prohibition against signage on walls and such like that. Do you know anything about that sign and whether or not any other signage is coming down, or is that basically people allowed to have that much signage along Main Street?
It's a percentage of the walls.
Yeah.
If it
Yeah,
was
it's been looked at by the zoning administrator and permitted. There was another wall sign that they were checking on that would come down as a part of that. So I think there's, whatever they had to have in signage, they had to pull something off to put the one up where they did.
Okay, so it just seemed, because I thought we had talked about Peabody and they're not allowed to have signs up on the wall of Peabody and such, but
Now, you can have wall signs, you just can't have them like as big as the building, which
Right.
is part of what
Okay.
Peabody was doing. But you do have a certain amount of frontage signage and wall signage, and all of that
Okay.
is actually built into the code.
And you can package them.
Yeah.
But roof signs.
Yeah, they were doing the electronic message center at Peabody, but they were also doing like signs
Big
half the
sign,
size of the
yeah.
building.
Yeah.
Because it is based on a square footage, and they way exceeded that, way at Peabody.
it just seemed like it was a large sign for the
Right.
size
It kind of
building.
looks like a roof sign because it's at the very top, but it's not.
Mm-hmm.
So there are points at which you can't go over the roof with a sign, but we checked that out. It definitely meets
Very good.
the requirements. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay, back onto our agenda then. We were into public comments.
I went to a downtown meeting.
Name and address.
John Nicholson, 413 North Grandview Avenue. Went to a downtown DDA meeting and went to their downtown meeting. And they always advertise. They always put out pamphlets. And in the meeting, one of the participants popped up with the brochure that came from a new district in Ormond Beach. And it was mailed to all of their residents. This is what we have for downtown. And they've had it. This is their third printing of it, all right? Everybody does it but you all. And if you haven't noticed it, you guys got more tourists than they do. But they're spending a great deal of money, and to me, it's not a lot. I was told it's for 25,000 copies of this, it was $1,400. All right? I don't think that's a great deal of money. Their emphasis is Beach Street for downtown, all right? A more comprehensive one was the one that Ormond did. If you open up to the very center, it literally looks like the Main Street CRA. It would be your A1A, it would be your International Main Street, and personally I would add, and I know you guys are not allowed to pay for it, but I would add Seabreeze. Because I've been working with Main Street, there are 17 places to eat, drink, and be entertained on Main Street. There are only really 3 locations that are biker bars. You have a tremendous diversity on Main Street. People just don't see Main Street as a place to eat or drink or be entertained. There are over 100 locations in or near the Main Street area to eat, drink, or entertain, or be entertained. To me, that is where your emphasis should be. And if you put something out of this nature to let the community and the tourists know where all those locations are, I think you would enhance the area tremendously. With regard to Gary, by any chance, did you notice whether that last light was on behind the band shell. It's been out for 3 months.
There are some problems with the lights on the Broadwalk there being out. You're correct.
Right. But this particular one, I've gone to Florida Power and Light, city manager, mayor, CRA director. It's not something that you want to have for 6, 8, or 10 months like the last time. We ended up with 8 of the 13 were out for extended period of time. Secondly, the downtown is pushing a farmer's market, as you know. They also put out an RFP to have a marketing director. Their downtown partnership has been dissolved, basically. They're putting out an RFP to have a marketing for downtown. I would ask you all to consider the idea that you guys market beachside, that you market the E-zone. And I understand the E-zone has told you to take a hike, that you have nothing to do with the E-zone, which I'm not real fond of the idea that you are going to give up your most lucrative portion of your CRA and have no control over it, and have a guy come in and say, hi, how are you? My name is so-and-so, and see you later. I think it's terribly important that you control the E-zone, that you have the hands-on at all times on the E-zone. ERA has come out with this little wind turbine. I don't know if you saw it in the paper the other day. I would ask you to consider inviting them to put it at the end of the pier. The city owns the pier. I think it's something that tourists would catch their eye, especially if it was like red or orange or yellow or something. They would go out, they would look at it. One, they would gain knowledge. Secondly, they would understand that ERAU is here in town, and that we are more than just a pretty face. There are things happening in our community. I think that would do a lot to help this city enhance itself. The Corbin Building, there was a article in the paper from, what's his name, Don Poor, with regard to synergy and what would be needed. His concept was that you had to have the public control the land in terms of what could be built there and whatever. There was an offer by a landowner, which would then enable the city to have total control of 7 square blocks north of Main Street. In other words, almost all the empty lots north of Main Street. It was, I think, a relatively good one, but it was short-shifted. I think it's something that you all should be presented with so that you all understand what it entailed, because you would be able to control from basically Coate Street all the way to Hollywood and then north to Earl Street. I think it's a great deal of property, and it's something that would be of value to you, but I think it's at least something you all should be able to discuss and have knowledge of. That have it die somewhere in staff and you guys never get presented with it is something I think is amiss.
John, I think, could you do me a favor with
Yeah.
respect to the light issue, because that's important to me?
Uh-huh.
If you could start maintaining a list of the lights that are out,
Uh-huh.
and you submit that to us on a monthly basis, okay? With a description of it and such, we'll see that that gets passed on as something that we're concerned with, and maybe we can help get the lighting issue resolved.
I think it's terribly
But we need
important
your, boots on the ground out there to give us the list and come back the next month and say, well, they're all still not there, or
for,
this
you want
one's fixed.
graffiti list as well?
Nah, well,
just lights.
You got,
just lights, one
Okay.
step at a time.
all right. Do you want
Okay.
damage list? There's a sidewalk that's crumbling on A1A. They're putting in a building next to IHOP.
Sure.
John, if there's something that's
And there's
significant, let us know.
a risk there.
And the more you can give it to us in a written form that we can pass on and such and monitor, all the better.
Okay, and one last thing. There's talk that you're going, remember I've been pushing replacement for David? He's been gone for 4 years. You will not be able to do that. They're taking his salary and putting it in with the E-zone manager, so you will lose that. The other CRAs will have somebody, and you all will not. All right, thank you.
Thanks, John. Okay.
May I,
Any further public comments? None, thank you.
Mr. Chair, may I respond to just a couple comments?
Sure, Reed.
If you don't mind. Just to clarify that the partnership about being dissolved, it's not. The partnership is still, they just simply decided not to go forward with an agreement with the Downtown Development Authority. So they're still in existence, and they're going through some organizational changes at this time. The next thing is on the E-zone marketing You know, that's certainly a great idea, and I think you've got some information about an E-zone, project manager, some other things, and I think that's clearly some things we want to do. In the meantime, I think we're working on something internally. We'll bring something back to you because a few of you have already been interested in having a brochure similar to what Ormond's put out, and that's not that difficult to do. I think Jason's done a great job. If you haven't seen already, he put a directory together. It looks more like your shopping mall directory, so we'll look at that. And then lastly, on the E-zone, the manager position itself, that is a 50-50 deal. That means 50% is CRA funds, 50% is coming out of the general fund. Okay, just separate.
So I hope
straight.
that we have like at least
Half.
a fair working relationship with the new E-zone person, because I would really like to see them here with a monthly report and such, so we can interact with that person, because I think it's critical to the
Yeah.
both of us.
I'm making the assumption there'll be some clear communication here.
Good.
To keep
Yes.
everyone informed.
I'm certainly going to be in favor of that.
Mr. Chairman, one quick thing. I believe Tracy was on the commission when this happened, but we did officially change the name of the Broadwalk to Boardwalk. It is the Boardwalk, okay? I know Captain Dare was there because he was opposing us, but we actually went before the city commission and had a vote, and the name of the Boardwalk is Boardwalk. And the Boardwalk Property Owners Association supported that move.
Even though all the signage says
He was
Broadwalk.
just saying the signs haven't been changed.
Okay, well, the
That-
signs then should be changed at one point
I
in time.
think you missed that part when he said, that's why
Okay.
he's going, this is what it says it is down there.
Okay, but it is Boardwalk.
Which we
okay.
could put at the top of that list from John.
Okay, so the
But yes, it is
Broadwalk has
officially
officially been renamed the
to the
Boardwalk,
Boardwalk.
but still has signage saying Broadwalk, and all the
Apparently.
historic
Yes.
matters refer to it as Broadwalk. So I would really
Yeah.
prefer nobody take offense to either one of the terms, as long as we
It
know what
is.
we're talking about.
As long as we're all on the same
Thank you.
walk.
Yeah.
Gary?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, about the E-zone manager, I think, Mr. Berger, the reason that the announcement of the E-zone manager resonated so dramatically through the community was, as you know, Clarion did not recommend an E-zone manager, but instead recommended an independent body, very similar to this body. to-
Clarion didn't do that.
Pardon me, the
yeah.
consultant.
That was, who were they?
AECom.
AECom, yeah.
Yeah, AECom, yeah. It is so unlike what the consultant suggested that I think it puzzled a lot of people. And I think there still are lingering questions, as Mr. Nicholson suggested, about the working relationship between an independent single person, but yet who's going to be in charge of a budget yet to be determined, and hire staff yet to be determined, et cetera, and this board knowing that at least 50% and probably more than that in the future of the funds to generate this whole endeavor will come from the trust fund. So I know that this isn't your decision, and nobody wants to, put you in a hot spot, but I think there needs to be some more clearly defined written relationship, at least in draft form, working between this position and obviously the staff that's going to come very fast after it, and this board. We're looking at recommendations that might look at special events within the E-zone, yet one of the qualities this person has to have is to throw big special events, and that's one of the biggest paragraphs in the description, setting up temporary stages and doing outdoor stuff. So I think it would be easy for the press, and it would be easy for people who are following this to be confused with the sort of double tracking, because they're not complementary. They seem to be heading for a gunfight at the OK Corral. We tend to do that on a regular basis, and maybe that's why. But could you share with us, is there any written policy so that we understand what our role is in this, obviously a new very important, major administrative position, the E-zone manager, who also, by the way, doesn't have to have a real estate license, which I think was an omission, but barring that.
Let me just first of all say that that's a very detailed job description. It has, obviously, it's asking for someone to have a very broad set of skills, talents, and background to take on the tasks that are there. It's very demanding of whomever fills that position. And I think what I would represent it as is very complimentary and supportive of doing the things that help us as we prepare to implement some of the suggestions that are in that plan at the beginning. The plan says do a lot of things, including forming some kind of an organization that will be down there and doing the work, and that's the policy part that hasn't been addressed yet. And what I would tell you is that this E-zone position is one that I see as someone who's going to help us. Those lights at the band shell that someone like myself who's trying to fill in here, and I don't get out there all the time, and I'm going to try to keep dogging it, but there's going to be someone who is absolutely accountable to all the little things that are on there that we all want fixed, and as well as in the future when they get these events together, working on those. That's why some of those things that are in the job description may not be happening until there's more of this overall umbrella organization put together, and I can't tell you for sure. There's no at this time, as far as I know, probably until they get someone on board and they know who they have, how that person is going to work with everyone else at the city here. But I think the manager certainly knows where that's going to go, and he is working on that. And as soon as I think we have somebody in place, we'll be able to have that discussion.
Reed, I think if you look at the job description, it's pretty easy to circle those things that are doable tomorrow.
Yeah.
And the things that are doable tomorrow really might not contribute or be complementary to the E-zone plan and some of these other plans. As a matter of fact, it would be very easy to see that they might be contradictory to that plan. And where all of us know that infrastructure improvements are needed and are basic, they're going to be way down the line because we don't have the money to do that, and we don't know the audience that we're serving. And a lot of the big dreams on the wish list that all of us have bought into, I think the commission has bought into, realize those are way down the pike. It's like our representative, a dentist who was telling me on the radio just a little while ago, don't worry about DeBarry to Orlando. In the future, we're going to have a train that goes from DeBarry to Daytona Beach, to the boardwalk, to the Ocean Center. But that's not on the plan. It's 20 years off in the future. And so I think it's easy for people the red light to go on when they see the E-zone manager, because a large part of it is special event. It sounds like special events. Might not be, but it just, and
Well,
it
I
reads
think-
like special events.
I'll just say one more thing, if I could, Mr. Chair, and that's that this is a position that's intended to do a lot of the smaller incremental things, and that includes some of the event management that has to go on right now, coordinating a lot of things that happen out there, the joggers with the cones, whatever it might be. There's a lot of things that this person is going to have to work on a day-to-day basis, and I would expect that person will be dealing with the tourists, the people who are coming there, and making sure that destination is getting better, despite not having the money for infrastructure or anything at this point. What can we do to make Main Street, South Atlantic, a better place?
There's been a lot of discussion about the relationship, both historic and in the future, between the chamber and the redevelopment area. And I've heard people voice concern that the creation of an E-zone manager who has the ability to put a staff together might suggest a new formula or a new model for how we handle the financial side of special events. So the people on both sides of the issue are asking, I think, pretty good questions, considering the amount of dollars that are involved and the cost to the city. So I think the more information you could share with us, the more comfortable I think I would be, and I think my colleagues would be too. We know what the deal is and there are no surprises. That's all.
And something tells me it's going to be something that's going to be evolving over time, but we really would like to be on the cutting edge of it, so we can at least try to answer some questions and be
And
prepared
help.
and help out. You know, we're all here because we want to see it get better, so we all are anxious to be more involved in that regards. All right, moving on then to the Land Development Code rewrite. Jason? Or am I, wait. No,
future-
I'm looking at the wrong agenda last week.
Future
last
land
agenda.
use issues.
The future land use issues.
Yeah, Mike Forrest.
See if everybody's on their toes and staying away.
Thought we were going back to last month.
Well, we were, but
This is just an issue, just want to begin to have the discussion, and really this is a follow-up to some of the discussions that this board you were having when we were going through the edits and the changes to the Main Street plan as we were trying to incorporate the ideas of the E-zone. I think this issue was raised about the future land use in the area next on Halifax Avenue between the Main Street, basically north of Main Street.
RDB 7 specifically.
Well, that's the zoning district, but we're
Okay.
really looking at the future land use.
Right.
Okay.
And this also came up, I think, when we were having the discussion last month about the Land Development Code and the consistency with the RDB 7 and what is the underlying land use. Essentially what you have, this area, looking at this map, the shades of colors might be a little difficult to read, but that area is designated what's called riverfront lodging. This is the future land use. But as was mentioned by Mr. Paspalakis, the area, well, first of all, in terms of looking at what's there developed right now, in terms of looking at the aerial, this is where we have the historic homes. It's in the historic district or the national district, where I think there, as you talked about earlier, there's some discussion of that possibly being designated as a local district. I think it's some of the discussions occurring at the Historic Preservation Board. And just to kind of go through the current designated use, which is the riverfront lodging, if you look at what that designated use allows, it allows for residential uses up to 40 units per acre, so very intense uses. Allows for hotels and motels, riverfront parks, restaurants as part of larger projects, so probably part of the hotel, hotels or restaurants and hotels, and parking. But with everything with the designating the residential, preserving those homes, this underlying land use seems to conflict with are some of the policies and other aspects of the redevelopment plan. So what we want to have is discussion with you, or just get some direction from this board before we really come back with a more concrete proposal. What we could do is to pursue redesignating this area that's in the yellow as level 1 residential would be more consistent with what has been the future plans, and really really just leave the riverfront lodging use just be around those properties that are just directly adjacent to. Let's see if this thing has a.
Can you get back there?
Well, you probably can't really see on this map, but you have where the wreck or the old bar is to continue, where that riverfront lodging, where that's more consistent with what it, and the property to south of Main Street, on the south side of Main Street, right there at the Halifax River, is consistent with this land use designation would be consistent with what's in the E-zone plan. So remain it there,
Yeah.
but these, where the historic properties are, the residential use, have those as level 1 residential.
and you're really talking from 11 up through the Greek church.
Yes, because the Greek church is currently in. And I think in the shading it might not really show up real well, but that is actually right now designated public institutional.
Right.
It already has a different land use designation.
You have two properties owned by the Forrest family, and Miss Forrest is the one on our chart that says primary area of interest. It's a historic house. Her brother owns the house to the south and the lot across the street there.
Which one? Now, you north of the church or south?
I'm talking south.
Okay.
South of the church, that is a historic house.
Right.
The Urban Land Institute identified that structure and the Forest House as significant structures to keep, to not let anything happen to them. And then we tore down the Hatch House. The Hatch Estate tore that down. And Mr. Forrest purchased that property to make sure that a hotel or a motel or a
Yeah.
duplex or quadruplex didn't go in there. Have you had a chance to talk to the property owners?
No, see, we want to first have the discussion here. Depending on what direction you have, we will proceed with having the staff time in terms of whatever discussions we need to have. There would have to be some planning analysis done because you are talking about a redesignation of land use, so we'd have to work with the planning staff on that and what would be required at the state level to do this.
Yeah, I think
See,
it's critical that you do, because I think
We
that
wanted to
there-
first have the discussion with this board
Yeah.
before we really, if there's an interest here, then we'll proceed with committing
Well,
the staff
I
time.
I think that I agree that future land use doesn't work for what's there, and especially as we've changed focus on historic. And, you know, down the road, 20, 30 years, it may become lodging, but I would see it lodging in the historic homes, i.e.
Right.
bed and breakfast. That's the kind of lodging,
After
that, and you
use.
would need to keep it, it needs to be
Right.
the level 1 residential to
Right.
do that. And I'm sorry the Hatch Estate was ever torn down. I don't think it was beyond repair, but to the way it is right now, all it will take is one property selling out to ruin. We will lose everything else there. It's gone.
Yeah.
It's gone.
Yeah, I think just a quick analysis is that it appears to be the underlying land use is not consistent with
Correct.
the future
It's not.
the
Correct.
plans.
You know, just for the record, everybody knows I'm one of those homes. And I know all the neighbors along there. And I think the vast majority would support the concept that it be maintained as a residential neighborhood. We don't want to see apartments, condos, commercial uses. You know, if in the future something in the form of a B&B in one of the existing facilities might be appropriate, with very, you know, set limits on that. But we want to see the integrity of that home, those homes in that neighborhood. I'll disagree with respect to the home on the corner that was torn down. It was falling down. I had people in there and such, and it was
Really bad.
it was really bad. It was totally unsafe to even walk up into the second floor.
I have a home like that right across the street from me, and these two men who have restored it have done a beautiful job, and it would have been lost. You had to walk on beams because you couldn't step on the planks. You didn't know if you'd go through them, and you didn't go up to the second floor. And it's beautiful what they've done.
Yeah.
It's, you know, and so it is in the eye of the
Yeah.
beholder. And yes, it may have been more
It could have been saved.
than any one of us may
it's
have done
possible,
into
but
it,
it's
but the,
It was-
yes, it would cost a lot.
Yeah,
I
it was,
mean,
it was
Yeah.
a hoarder's home.
yeah, I
And
agree.
It was,
But you would
the
also.
Drywoods had been in that to everybody's
Uh-huh.
known
They'd
history.
eaten so much they left.
Yes,
Yeah.
they left and came north or south.
But I also think what's important besides I also think local historic designation is so important for that, and especially to make sure that what is built there is compatible.
Yeah.
What goes back there is compatible to that type of wonderful historic
I mean,
home.
that little stretch, the industrial row there
Mm-hmm.
is I think very important to the community.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anybody who does not support that concept? Okay.
I'm consistent with that concept on the highlighted portion. I just want to point out that that the shaded portion here is not consistent with that yellow box that you have up there.
Well-
and that is because I'm talking about that one piece of property, which is the church.
Right, the
Okay.
church. And
So-
for some
So
reason with
you corrected it on that one.
right,
Yeah.
the printed, I'm not sure what happened here in terms of with the colors.
Didn't come quite.
It didn't come, it's like, it's supposed to be a little darker color
Yeah.
of blue.
Mm-hmm.
The church, just the church property, I have another map, shows it as being designated public institutional, so we
Then
wouldn't
no
be.
problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not touching,
Yeah,
talking
just,
about that.
Like Gary Libby said, to talk to the property owners, but I have confidence in what you said. They would all be consistent with that.
They are, I think, in agreement. The property
Yeah,
owners.
you know, and there's actually one that's considering it's going up for sale and such, and we really, you know, I think sooner rather than later, we need to get the issue addressed. Do we have any further discussion with respect to future land uses, or is that covered, Jason?
Well, it was just, that was the one issue I think that came up during the
Yeah,
E-zone.
the
If
big-
there's any
And
others.
Thank you, Jason,
Yeah.
for bringing that back.
Or it came up during the, either through, when we were dealing with the E-zone or dealing with the Clarion rewrite with the RDB7. That was the issue that came up, so this
Which
would
I didn't see that in the minutes either, but if you want to make sure that they get.
And Jason, if you're proceeding on that and you want to get in touch with any of the neighbors and such, just give me a holler.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Okay, be glad to help out. All right, moving on, Reed, redevelopment projects update, is that you?
I believe so. I'll make this really quick because I think we've covered most of the items. The E-Zone Manager Surfside Historic District. I do want to talk about the grants program that was approved by the commission last week. So that one, we're not taking or processing any new applications this time. We'll be letting people know. We have a waiting list. We've been taking a waiting list every time someone calls. So we have people to get back to, and we just have to be careful and count the numbers because there's not that much in funds left. So we want to make sure we don't start marketing before we've make sure we have all the funds we need. I think Main Street's in pretty good shape from a funding standpoint at this point, but we'll be getting the word out as soon as we get through that. I would hope by next week we'll clear the air and we'll know that where we stand. Okay. The last thing is on the E-Zone master plan. That process of the land development code and the comprehensive plan change all went to the commission for some final actions to move it forward. That all has been put off for a workshop February the 15th. Yes, it's slowed down dramatically, so I don't have much more to report than that.
We're not
Question.
waiting to hear from Sarasota, are we?
No, that's been
Okay.
addressed.
Okay, good.
Reed, I got
David, you had a question?
Question for you. It's not about redevelopment project, but it's where are we at? Could you give us an update on where we're at with Al Smith's Christmas festival and the Christmas tree lighting, which supposedly is going to happen in 2 weeks? You know, Thanksgiving time, and we haven't heard much about it. I was just kind of wondering, is the Christmas tree going on and the festival and all that good stuff?
Is my understanding it's all moving forward with all the different people involved to make it happen. I haven't heard any glitches other than we will be having a meeting next week to finalize what we're doing with the holiday lights that the CRA will be participating in. It's under, I think, $25,000 a year, but there is a proposal to finish up our part because you've got the counties in. They're putting up decorations. The Ocean Walk Shops is in. There's lots of other sponsors involved with the ice rink. The only piece then that's missing that has not been completely executed is the band shell decorations and the lighting on Main Street and A1A. And so those decorations need to be approved in terms of funding.
And what's the budgeted share that's coming out of CRA trust funds?
When you say share, a percentage of
Or amount? Yeah, what is the total
the amount, the
coming
total
out?
package is, it's a 5-year lease to purchase. And so,
A
it's
5-year lease
it's a
to purchase?
5-year lease to purchase. Half of that amount would be the cost for the fabrication of the lights.
And what is that? Give us a dollar. How much in dollars is coming out of the Main Street CRA trust fund?
It would be proposed to have about 24,000, just under 25,000
a
each
year.
year
Okay.
for all of the lighting, all of everything up and down those streets.
Okay, and which is actually less than we've spent on a single night event on Main Street
Yeah,
in the
and,
past.
right,
Okay.
and it's, I think the county's participated in a much larger amount
Mhm.
in their part.
And they have a 5-year commitment as well?
Well, I think they did a little differently. I think they purchased it up front, and they have a different arrangement, is my
Okay.
understanding. I don't have all of the background on that, but
Okay.
that's where we're at.
And the reason for bringing it up, Reed, was it's a great idea, and I was just making sure it was still going forward.
Yeah, everyone's fingers are crossed, but what I've heard is that things are going well in terms of sponsorship, and so that makes it financially more feasible to make it a success.
Very good. Okay, moving on then, board comments.
You had-
Oh,
I thought we were at board comment.
Teresa?
Oh, okay. No,
Any
I
comment?
was going to say Timmy.
Truman? David? Tracy?
Happy Thanksgiving.
There you go. Tim?
Reed, I'm glad to see we finally got construction going on that burned down building on the 400 block. Any word on what's going on with the parking lot improvements at the boardwalk parking lot?
Yes, I think that they've been going through and taking bids to get the contractor they want to do the actual work. So we've been in conversation with them, and as you know, there's another little parking lot that we've had out there that needs to get addressed as well, and I'm meeting with that a property owner tomorrow to try to push that along. So
The one
we're-
south of Harvey?
right,
Okay.
that's correct. That's correct. Because that one is behind as well, so we need them both cleaned up.
The permit's been issued for the boardwalk lot? The building permit?
Do you know? Is it?
I believe so. Yes, and their clock's already ticking.
Yeah.
Well, that's the clock on the 2
2
years or
years.
whatever, but
The-
we're concerned about the clock and getting it renovated so it doesn't look like it did.
Well,
Because
Because they don't,
nothing's happened down there from,
Well, but there's also in those conditions, there's maintenance requirements.
well,
But nothing's happened.
This is
Yeah, but
about
we're-
get it done now, and
Yeah.
where's the action? That's
Yeah.
what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
yeah, because
There was-
it can't be, I mean, I gotta reiterate this again, it's not 2 years for them to complete the improvement.
No.
Right, so
No.
what is the?
They're
what-
to have the improvements put in place, and that's what I'm saying, within the conditions, there's
By,
immediately.
what is immediately?
As soon as,
A month ago, it was immediate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so which
Yeah.
is, I mean, what is the date of immediately?
Well, that's the date we issued the permit, and I don't, off the top of my head, I don't remember what
Okay.
that date was, but I'm trying to remember what meeting you guys did, but soon, a couple weeks after that, they finalized all the permits with the city, and that's what started the,
and now
I
they're
think it
moving
was-
forward
I
with
think
the
it was
bid
2 months
process.
ago we approved it. A month ago, we were asking what's happening. We're told
Right.
the permit's almost issued. Now the permits may be issued. Now they're out for
the
bid.
permits issue, I do recall.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But,
We
you know,
were looking
it's,
at penalties,
But was it by
Yeah.
February 1st or so, I don't know why that date, there was a date that that was set.
It dropped dead.
That if
Yeah.
it wasn't, it was to be not allowed to operate until the improvements were done.
My understanding is that
That's right.
the lot, if nothing changes, the work that they're doing and what they're planning on doing, they want it completed before the end of this calendar year. That is what we have been told.
and I
Okay.
think as we look at any more of these that come online, we need to establish a timetable for them to be getting them their permit and construction and such. And, started and a completion time as part of a condition, and I think we'll be looking to do that. So you might just let them know as they're applying and such, that I think as a condition, they need to be able to do it in a fairly expeditious manner and not take 3 or 4 months for something that should be done, I think, sooner. Gary?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think what something like this is going to cause is for there to be conditions on future applications that I don't think the applicant is going to like, because there's been such a open, free, you assured us, the staff assured us, that you would get them to start the project ASAP.
We
I
will not-
remember Reed looking at us and saying, "Don't worry, I'll handle it," and we still have missing.
Well, it is my responsibility, I accept
I
that.
mean, I only can speak for myself. I won't be as forgiving or
Right,
lenient
right.
because we went on a good faith thing. I don't want to run into next season looking at the same thing.
Let me just interject a point if I can, and preface that by saying, while I understand the code has been changed on these temporary parking lots, I don't do land use anymore, so I don't know what those specific changes are, but it sounds to me like some of what you're talking about is going to raise a question as to whether that's within the code criteria or not right now. And what are, I think what you need is to maybe have a better understanding as to what the exact conditions are. You might not be able to impose some of those conditions
Well,
unless you change.
Oh, yeah, we
I
can.
think
Oh, no,
actually,
no,
I
no.
think technically they're out of compliance. so
Right.
They could be shut down tomorrow.
Absolutely.
And so what we're gonna be doing is, we don't see, fair handling of it, we're gonna ask that they start the process of shutting down the operation.
The
Because
clock
if
has
they're out of
run out on their
compliance,
original.
They're out of compliance.
Yes, they're out of compliance for a non-conditional use,
And they'd applied for a conditional use, correct?
which
And received-
we
Under the
grant-
new
which we-
guidelines.
Under the new guidelines, we granted the conditional use under the guise that they would. that
With
these cha-
conditions.
With conditions, and these improvements would have been made in X amount of time, which I guess I'm gonna have to go back and look and see, because there was
there's
a date.
There's a 6-month, on a building permit, and there's a 6-month period in
Yeah,
there.
but the day we approved it, the clock started running.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying, though, is
Look, I can actually give you some legal guidance now.
Okay, thank you.
That Article 4, Section 7.4, this is general provision. There may be more specific provision for these temporary parking lots.
There are.
And I'll get to that in a minute, but generally speaking, if the conditional use isn't established within a year, then the approval is void. Without any additional action, it's void. And they'd be subject to code enforcement.
But here's what we have, Ben, is we have a non-compliant temporary parking lot operating that, in order to get an extension of it, was granted a 2-year extension, subject to their upgrading the parking lot. And the problem is that we now see that the upgrades seem to be going at a snail's pace.
Yeah, and I get that. And
Yeah.
it sounds like the form of what you're calling as an extension was the issuance of a conditional use
Cre-
permit.
I
Right,
believe so.
exactly.
Right, and the conditional use permit was for temporary parking lots.
Yes,
That's
And
correct.
the criteria for the parking lots has changed.
yes.
Correct.
Right.
Except what is sort of sticking in everyone's craw is that it is still operating
Daily.
daily as a temporary parking lot without having actually changed over and met the criteria under the new conditional use.
Yeah, probably should have been shut down until they were in compliance. I think if I had to do it again, I think I would consider that.
Yeah, I just think we need to see things move a little quicker.
Okay, and let me do this in the meantime, before we gather again in a month, and if there's an update, I'm going to email all of you, so I'll bring you up to date on the progress. So I know it's happening. I know they're working on it diligently, and I'll fill you in.
And Reed, I think you need to get together with Carrie and see what enforcement mechanisms there might be in this instance, which is, I think, really what the board's talking about.
Yeah.
And Mr. Henderson was here. He was the presenter representing the owners, and he said immediately, and he's a pretty upfront guy, and maybe there were problems they hit other than just sloth to keep this thing from going forward. But I think you get the feel that it wasn't a slam dunk when this thing went through, and it went through with some conditions that the improved landscaping and water and the improvements would be made ASAP. And we were told that they had already gone through draft review by the staff, so there shouldn't have been any holdup on the actual architectural plan.
Well, I'll try to give you some chronology, go back. There may be some extenuating circumstances they can provide as well, but I'll try to give you some dates and help everybody understand where we're at.
Gary,
the-
any other comments?
Yeah, the way this is written, can the staff alter the conditions that are set by this board? And I didn't think so, you know. Mr. Chairman, 2 years ago, I can remember little more than 2 years, sitting in the Ocean Center at a joint meeting of the City Commission and the County Council. And the discussion then was about the E-zone and the Main Street redevelopment board, and several individual members of the county council voiced their deep concern over the physical condition of the Main Street redevelopment area. Mrs. Northey took the lead on discussing what she considered to be really inferior maintenance on the part of the city to property that was controlled by the city, and she understood that private property owners needed to be brought into compliance through code, but she was really borrowing in on the city's failure to physician heal thyself, to keep its own property in order. I guess less than a year ago, there was a second meeting at the lifeguard station, and once again, we heard the county council voicing some pleasure on the improvements, but they still felt there was an awful lot that needed to be done. I guess 3 months ago, I asked redevelopment officer Mr. Berger why 95% of the lighting on the lit signs was burned out in the redevelopment area, especially on A1A and the cross streets. He assured me, and he assured you, that they were checked weekly. Now, at our last meeting, nothing had been done, and as of this morning, early this morning, there are 5 more burned out lights. I think there are 3 or 4 lit signs that designate streets off A1A, and I don't know what it's going to take, Reed. Am I going to have to go to the city commission meeting and form a complaint that the redevelopment staff isn't responsive to getting light bulbs and these signs? What is it going to take to get these things lit?
Okay. Number one, you did ask that in the last month, and I can tell you, number one, that is something that has been addressed. I did not.
It hasn't been addressed.
Let me tell you that, number one, I know it's not addressed yet, but the light poles themselves, okay? I was referring to the weekly check. That turns out that weekly check was for the lights that we have along A1A. And I mean, I did not understand that was the street name lights, and so we had that conversation. So
Well, just look at the minutes. The minutes are pretty clear. They say that they're the street, the name street.
No, I understand that now. I do understand it. So anyway, that's been conveyed. I know we're dealing with state property here, or state right-of-way, but it will be fixed, is my
Isn't it
understanding.
the city's responsibility to maintain those
No,
signs as
no,
lit?
but
It's not?
but it's a traffic issue, and we have a traffic person on staff, and that's something that they're trying to work. We had the same thing with FPL.
Okay.
Some of these things we have to depend on others to actually do the fix. We're working on that.
So Reed, are they the county or DOT?
This DOT.
Okay, and
So-
so the city road person is dealing with the DOT person?
That's right. It's a traffic to traffic.
Okay.
And
very
could
good.
I just say, in dealing with the DOT, any DOT, it took me 2.5 years of my 4-year term as commission to get a DOT problem on US 1. I mean, monthly with a median. It's DOT. They'll get to it when they get to it. And we have no control over it. All we can do is just keep after them, like the squeaky wheel. Keep after them, keep after them, keep after them. And every time I drove by this, it just got my goat, and every month.
Yeah, I had trouble with the sidewalks too on A1A, but
Yeah.
if you drive up A1A from the shores to Ormond Beach, the only municipality that does not have 95% or more of lit street signs is Daytona Beach. And you can tell when you enter the city limits of Daytona Beach, and it's a terrible indictment on our inability to stimulate, if we're not responsible for it, for us not to get a little thing like that done. And I can understand why members of the county council think we're terrible at details, because all they have to do is drive down A1A and see the same dark corridors there. It just doesn't make any sense. And I'd appreciate, Reed, if we could help, if there's some way that I can help or we could help
what I was just gonna
with
say.
the DOT,
We can
please let
help.
us know.
Beat up on someone.
He's a lawyer. Let him
Let us go beat up on him.
Let her.
Who knows Governor Scott? Okay, thank you.
Actually, Lisa Kennedy does.
There you go.
Karen Jan says, a lot of people do. I mean,
A lot of people
yeah.
who have a vested interest.
Okay,
And-
well, we're working the system right
Yep.
now. Give us an
You're dealing
opportunity
with
here.
the land office of DOT?
I'm not sure who they talked to directly on that
Okay.
particular item.
All right, well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare.
Dino, anything?
happy Thanksgiving. See you guys at the Greek Festival this weekend.
Happy Greek Festival, everybody. Good night. Stand adjourned.
Opa.
Tomorrow night.